I've taken a lot of rideshare trips over the years. Some were awkward, some were uncomfortable, but none ever made me feel like my life was in danger. At least not until last fall. I had just landed in Seattle for a business trip, and it was past midnight by the time I got outside to order a Lyft. Cold rain drizzled down, making the pavement slick under the yellow glow of the airport lights. I was exhausted and just wanted to get to my hotel. I booked a ride, and within seconds, a car was on its way. A black sedan pulled up to the curb. I glanced at my phone. Same make, same license plate. I barely hesitated before getting in. The driver didn't greet me. No polite nod, no small talk. Just silence. His hands gripped the wheel, fingers twitching slightly, like he was anxious. The only sound was the soft whoosh of the windshield wipers. At first, I didn't think much of it. Some drivers weren't talkers. I leaned back and checked my phone. But then I noticed something odd. The car wasn't following the route on my app. It should have taken the highway, but instead, we were on a dimly lit side road. My stomach tightened. I tapped my screen, checking the estimated time of arrival. The numbers had jumped. It now said 45 minutes instead of 20. I glanced up at the dashboard. The driver's phone was face down, screen dark. No GPS running. No rideshare app open. That's when I felt something was wrong. At first, I tried to stay calm. Maybe it was a detour. Maybe traffic was bad on the highway. But when the car made another turn onto an even darker road, my pulse started racing. I looked outside. No streetlights. No buildings. Just trees on either side. I shifted in my seat, trying to play it cool. I clicked off my seatbelt as quietly as I could, my fingers gripping the door handle. But before I could do anything, I heard it. The lock clicked. The driver had locked the doors. My throat went dry. I tried to act like I hadn't noticed, but my heart was hammering against my ribs. I tapped my phone, sharing my location with my friend. But the second I did, the driver adjusted his mirror, his eyes meeting mine. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. The car kept rolling down the road, deeper into nowhere. Then, without warning, he pulled over. My entire body went rigid. The engine was still running, headlights casting long shadows across the empty road. Then, slowly, he reached into his jacket. I didn't wait to see what he was grabbing. I lunged for the door handle, yanking it hard. It didn't budge. My fingers scrambled over the lock switch. But before I could hit it, the driver turned in his seat. That's when I saw his other hand gripping something between the seats. A glint of metal. I stopped breathing. He didn't speak. He just sat there, one hand still in his jacket, the other hovering over whatever was next to him. Then, in one slow motion, he put the car back in drive. I had never felt more helpless in my life. Minutes passed, each one stretching longer than the last. The road narrowed, swallowed by trees. I kept my breathing steady, watching his every move. My phone was still in my lap, my shared location active. But I had no idea if anyone would see it in time. Then, finally, I saw something up ahead. A gas station, a single pump, the fluorescent lights buzzing weakly. It was my only chance. The moment the car slowed near the entrance, I moved. I reached forward and slammed my hand against the steering wheel, laying on the horn. The blaring sound cut through the night, echoing off the trees. The driver flinched. It was just enough. Before he could react, I hit the lock switch, threw my weight against the door and tumbled out onto the wet pavement. I scrambled to my feet and ran. The gas station was closed, but there was a parked truck near the pump. I didn't stop running until I reached it, pounding on the driver's window. The man inside startled awake, eyes widening when he saw me. He immediately opened the door, and before I could say anything, he looked past me, toward the black sedan, but the car was already gone. No tire screech, no rush to escape. It had just disappeared into the darkness, leaving nothing but rain and the fading echo of the horn behind. The police took my statement, but the car was never found. The license plate I checked before getting in. It didn't match any registered vehicle. The ride on my app? It had been cancelled before I even got in. I don't know who that man was or what he planned to do, but I know one thing for sure. He wasn't my Lyft driver. I've never been the type to overthink things. If something feels off, I usually brush it off as paranoia. But after what happened last winter, I don't ignore that feeling anymore. It was late December and I was heading home from a friend's apartment after a small get-together. It wasn't that late, maybe 9 p.m., but it was already dark and the cold had settled in deep. Snow flurries drifted through the air as I pulled out my phone and ordered a Lyft. The app found a driver almost immediately. A silver SUV. Driver's name was Sam. The estimated time was 15 minutes. When the car pulled up, I barely hesitated before getting in. The interior was warm, and soft music played from the radio. The driver was a guy in his 30s, clean-shaven, wearing a baseball cap. He glanced at me in the mirror, gave a small nod, and pulled away from the curb. We were moving through the city streets, passing by dimly lit buildings and the occasional group of people walking on the sidewalk. Then I heard it. A notification. A quiet, single ding from the driver's phone. I didn't think much of it until I saw him glance at the screen, and then make a sudden turn. One that wasn't on the route. I frowned, checking my app. My destination hadn't changed, but we weren't heading in the right direction anymore. We were supposed to be taking the main road for another 5 minutes before turning. But instead, we were weaving through smaller, darker streets. I looked back up. The driver's phone screen was dimly lit, showing something I wasn't familiar with. It wasn't the Lyft app. It wasn't Google Maps. It was just a plain black screen with a single address and white text. I felt a cold weight settle in my chest. I forced myself to stay calm, to think logically. Maybe it was just a different navigation system. Maybe he knew a shortcut. Then the car slowed. We were in a quiet residential neighborhood now. Houses spaced apart, their porches covered in snow. There were no other cars around, no people. Just rows of houses, their windows glowing softly in the night. And then, the car pulled up to the curb and stopped. I stiffened. My address wasn't for another 10 minutes. The driver didn't say anything. He just sat there, eyes fixed straight ahead. I swallowed hard. My hand hovered over my phone, ready to hit the emergency button in the Lyft app. But before I could, something outside caught my attention. A shadow moving between the houses. I didn't know what I was looking at, but I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. I wasn't supposed to be stopped in the middle of a neighborhood I'd never seen before while someone or something waited outside. The driver exhaled sharply through his nose, like he was annoyed. Then, for the first time since I got in the car, he turned to look at me. His face was expressionless. His eyes lingered on mine for just a second too long. Then, he put the car back in drive. Without a word, we pulled away from the curb. My hands were shaking. I didn't say anything. I just watched as the neighborhood faded behind us, my pulse pounding in my ears. 10 minutes later, we arrived at my apartment. He stopped outside, unlocked the doors, and just waited. I got out without looking at him. I didn't breathe until I was inside. The deadbolt locked behind me. The next morning, I checked the ride history in my Lyft app. The trip details were normal. My pickup, my drop-off, everything looked fine. But when I went to look at the driver's profile again, it was gone, like it had never existed. I had heard about scams before. Fake passengers, fake emergencies, people trying to get a free ride. But I never thought I'd get caught in one myself until one night last fall, when I almost lost everything. It was a Saturday just after midnight. The city had that restless energy that came with the weekend. Drunk people stumbling out of bars, car horns blaring, neon signs flickering in the rain. I had been driving for hours, picking up passengers and making decent money. I was about to call it a night when one last ride popped up. A single passenger, pickup near a quiet stretch of road on the outskirts of downtown. The fare was good, and I figured it was an easy way to end the night. I accepted it and headed to the location. When I got there, I saw the passenger already standing on the curb. A guy in his late 20s, wearing a hoodie and jeans, looking a little impatient. He glanced around before getting into the back seat. I checked the app. The destination was about 15 minutes away. Nothing unusual. I started driving. For the first few minutes, everything was normal. The guy didn't talk, which I was fine with. He was looking at his phone, scrolling, his hood pulled up over his head. Then, about 5 minutes into the ride, something happened. Out of nowhere, a car swerved into my lane. I barely had time to react before I heard a bang. A loud, sickening thud. The car jolted, my hands tightening on the wheel. I hit the brakes, my heart slamming in my chest. I looked up and saw a man lying on the pavement. My stomach dropped. I had just hit someone, or at least, that's what it looked like. For a second I couldn't move, couldn't think. The man on the ground was clutching his leg, writhing in pain, his face twisted in agony. The car that had swerved into my lane was now stopped a few feet ahead, its hazard lights flashing. The guy in my back seat sat up straight, suddenly alert. This can't be happening, I thought. I knew I hadn't been speeding. I knew I hadn't lost control. But my car had definitely made contact. I unbuckled my seatbelt, my hands shaking as I reached for the door handle. Then I hesitated. Something felt off. The man on the ground, the way he was moving, the way he was holding his leg. It looked exaggerated, like he was acting. And the car in front of me, the way it had swerved so suddenly, so precisely. A realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't an accident. This was a setup. I had heard about scams like this before. A driver gets forced into hitting someone. The victim and their friends demand cash on the spot, threatening to call the police if they don't pay up. Sometimes they even plant fake witnesses to pressure the driver. And now, I was in the middle of one. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The guy in my back seat was no longer looking at his phone. He was watching me. My pulse pounded. My mind raced. If I got out of the car, I was screwed. If I stayed, they might try to force me. I had to think fast. I kept my doors locked. My hands were sweating against the wheel. Up ahead, the man on the ground kept groaning, shifting slightly. It was almost too much, like he wanted to make sure I saw how much pain he was in. The driver of the other car stepped out. A heavy-set man, early 40s, wearing a jacket too big for him. He looked at me, then at his injured friend. He started walking toward my car. Fast. My stomach tightened. The guy in my back seat shifted. I could feel the tension rising, like something was about to happen. I did the only thing I could think of. I threw the car in reverse. The engine roared as I hit the gas, backing up fast. The man in the road scrambled out of the way, suddenly not so injured anymore. I twisted the wheel, swinging the car around in a sharp U-turn. Tires screeched. The guy in my back seat lurched forward, caught off guard. He shouted something I didn't hear because I was already hitting the gas. The car shot forward. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. I didn't even check to see if they were chasing me. I just drove. My heart was hammering so hard I thought I might pass out. I sped down the road, watching the GPS, heading straight for the nearest police station. I didn't care about the fare. I didn't care if the guy in my back seat got mad. I wasn't about to be another victim. When I finally pulled up to the police station, I threw the car in park and turned around. The back seat was empty. The door was slightly ajar. At some point in all the chaos, he had slipped out. I reported the whole thing to Lyft. I even gave the police the pickup location, but they told me these kinds of scams were hard to trace. By the time they checked, the area was empty. No sign of the fake accident. No sign of the other car. Like it had never happened. But I knew better, and I never drove in that part of town again.